Welcome, everybody, and thanks for tuning in for another episode of Thriving and Change with Dr. Norcott. I am joined today by my friend, colleague, and mentor, Katurah Bryant. She is a nurse by training. She is a substance use disorder counselor, and she's a couples counselor, and she's just added author to the list. So thank you and welcome, Katurah.
Oh, thank you so much. It sounds like a lot, you know?
It is a lot.
And it's really been a blessing. So yeah, that's what I'm doing these days, and it's phenomenal. The idea of being an author was not in this kind of genre that I thought that I would do. I thought it'd be more of an autobiographical thing because I think my life span has been pretty interesting, but yeah.
I would second that. I would second that. Very interesting. And maybe we'll hear more about it. But I've invited you on to talk because one of the major periods of change and transition in someone's life is when they lose a loved one. And you wrote the Zola Experience to help coach people through that transition in their life. And I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit more about your book and also maybe what inspired you to write it.
The Zola Experience. What inspired me to write it has just really been my work, my life work, working with people in recovery, working with individuals that have experienced extreme loss, and how do we get there? How do we move the needle just a little for them to have some sense of relief, some sense of being able to say, I can move forward with my life. People come into treatment, we're at all spectrums. We're either depressed to the point we can't move, or angry to the point that it's just pure aggression and all of those things in between. And as a therapist, we're not really taught like what to do with people that have survived a loss. We get into the 5 stages of grief and this and that, but that's for the person that's transitioning. That's for the person that's dying. So after that, and then it's like, okay, now what do I do? I've supported this situation, but then, my work says that people experience loss at so many different levels. But there are certain things that are universal about recovering from loss. So your loss can be the loss of a job, which we are experiencing now, loss of careers, we're experiencing that, loss of secure housing, we're experiencing that, loss of body image, and loss of sense of your health. They're saying that people that have had COVID or post-COVID are going to have a myriad of physical complaints they don't know, perhaps for the rest of their lives. And so, I don't know, I just think that I was motivated to come up with a tool to help people, to help clinicians and providers, to help people to be able to move on past the grief, past the loss, so that they can begin to live again. And my philosophy is that you live again when you love again. And the love again begins with the love of self. The love of self, the forgiveness of self. It has to start here so that you can move past. Because, when someone is struggling with guilt, I should have listened to that last phone call. I should have, they introject themselves with all these shoulds and they keep carrying them. And then it's the ultimate in forgiveness is the creator. The creator doesn't hold grudges. I ask people all the time, what was your reality? What was it that you could do, that you did do?
And you're right. We don't really get a lot of tools for helping people with loss. I was wondering if we could just talk a little bit about what gets people stuck when they're experiencing something that's changing, maybe drastically, maybe slowly. In your experience, what keeps people stuck?
Some people get stuck because they feel they're responsible. Some people get stuck because they choose to feel guilty about whatever happened, that it's my fault, that if I woulda, shoulda, coulda done something different. And so what gets them stuck is that they either project into tomorrow or they stay in the past. And like I always say, when you live in your past, it's like grabbing at Jell-O. Your past is very real, and we need to recognize it for it being what it is. It's your past, but you can't bring it forward. And so it's like the grabbing with Jell-O. The Jell-O does have some density to it, but you can't take it anywhere. It keeps slipping through your fingers. And then when you try to project in the future, It's like, I'm going to do this next time. I'm going to do this. If I have the opportunity, that creates anxiety too, because the future doesn't really exist.
Mm.
And so your brain and your body is like, okay, I'm trying to hold on to something tangible. So the only thing tangible is right here, right now, today. Whatever your reality is today, that is the only thing that's tangible. And that's the only thing you really can work with, is what's going on today. How do you feel today? What can you do today in order for you to be able to move forward? And so with the book, there's 7 sessions, and each session builds on the other. According to my data, by the time they're at the last session, they've moved the needle. They've gained more insight about themselves, their relationship with whatever it was that they lost, whether it's the job or career or a loved one.
Is there any loss that you feel is harder to get over than another?
No, and it really is as individual as your thumbprint. And you can look at some people and you'll say, I lost my pet. And people are really connected to pets. Some people consider pets as family. And then there are those individuals that don't consider pets as family. They're like, well, what's the big deal? And then it really depends on your relationship with the lost love object that determines how devastating it is. We know that sudden loss is more difficult, it's more challenging to help people work through, because they truly are caught off guard, and it's truly a very intense and very traumatic experience. But then, you have somebody that goes through a long-term experience of loss with somebody that is terminal. And what do they say? What do both people say at the end of the day? I just wasn't prepared. I just wasn't prepared for the loss. I didn't know what to do. I knew this person was terminal, but I wasn't prepared for that day, that moment, for them to go.
Is the Zola experience meant to be done individually or as a group process?
It was originally designed for a group process, and it is most impactful in a group process. But I've used it in individual therapy, and it's equally as impactful. So you can use it for both. And so for a clinician to have such a tool that they can either form a group or they can work with the person individual, it really is, I believe, it will be an invaluable asset to the treatment world that we live in.
I know you personally, and I know that a big part of your experience of the world is through a lens of your spirituality. And I wonder, does that come across in the Zola experience, and how might that be experienced as a barrier for some? Maybe not, but I'm just wondering if that's ever come up.
It does, because when you're dealing with individuals in recovery, there's always a concern of theirs is around, they're hearing people say, God's got you, or, God makes no mistakes. And sometimes those kind of platitudes really kind of instances certain individuals. So when they come in, it's like whatever your spiritual or your philosophy of life is, that will give you an opportunity to make some sense of what is happening to your life right now, then we honor that. So if you say, my philosophy of life, I have an exercise in there that says, how has your spiritual walk impacted your recovery from loss? As the facilitator, I will then go into it and say, it's your spiritual walk, your philosophy of life, however you define that, how has that impacted your recovery from loss? You just have to kind of meet people where they are and change the language so that people can understand it. And I don't see it as any different than me trying to explain to someone about a psychiatric diagnosis or a medication. I have to break it down to the lowest common denominator that they can grasp, that they can understand.
Yeah, and sometimes it's about guiding people to just, like you said, the philosophy of life, and that sometimes is outside of or bigger, and people can find comfort in that. And sometimes reminding them that there's a voice inside of themselves that they're actually being guided by. And you even had an exercise that you've done with people about looking into the mirror. Can you share that?
Oh, yes. I love mirror work. And I think that it's an empowering place to be when you look at yourself into the mirror, because it's really about self-change. to be able to tell yourself, I love you. You are special. God only created me, and that makes me fabulous. And then you start to see yourself smile. The ultimate goal is that, some people have to literally start off with a little compact mirror this big because their sense of self is that big. And they struggle in the beginning. I used to keep a drawer full of little mirrors in my office. They're like, seriously, about this big, around 3 inches maybe. And I said, let's start there. Let's start building your sense of self. Let's start building your sense of self-esteem, how you see yourself, because you're a beautiful human being. There's no other human being on the planet Earth that is just like you. Even if you're a twin, your twin has something just slightly different. They don't have your same fingerprints. So you're unique, you're different. And so that mirror work is really important. And the ultimate thing is for you to be in a full-length mirror with your birthday suit on, talking about how fabulous you are. And that's really important for women, perhaps more so than men, because we're given so many messages about who we are and what we should be doing and how we should look and the whole 9 yards. And then when you couple that with a loss of any kind, particularly a loss of a family member, it's like, were you a good daughter? Were you a good daughter? Were you a good niece? Were you a good wife? And that really impacts an individual. And that's some of those things that get people stuck.
So that just makes me think, I remember I got a massage once and the masseuse rubbed my belly. And I became so aware how this was a part of my body that I often sent so many negative messages to. It almost felt uncomfortable to have kind, loving touch.
And like I say, for women in particular, we need support to do that. And if you've lost a sense of your body, let's say you've had surgery or you have some condition that is impacting your physical appearance, the Zola Experience will help them come to a place of peace, perhaps, about that, because the way that we help them to see how much more there is of them than this particular loss. And the same principle, whatever your lost love object is, you are much more than what you have lost because you are here and you can magnify and you can create a legacy that is phenomenal as a result of the loss that you have experienced.
You've used lost love object, and that's such a powerful phrase, but I haven't heard it before. How did you come to that, and what meaning does that have?
Well, like most things, I come just through my spiritual, I pray, it's like I pray on it. It's like, I ask for that divine intervention. And so in coming up with what would be a term that would cover everything, because I was aware that when I was doing the writing, that I was writing to cover all kinds of losses. And so your lost love object is one of those things, you've lost this thing and you had some emotional connection to this thing. That's why you're struggling. That's why you are holding on. That's why you can't move forward. And so your lost love object is the universal term that I coined so that it can mean anything. If it's important to you, then it's your lost love object that you have lost. Like when I was working with the person that lost their career as a result of probably sexism, racism, or whatever, but they lost their career. And even though there was some resolution to the loss as far as legally or financial or whatever, but they couldn't go back to what they were doing. And so therefore that's where they got stuck. Now it was like, okay, I can't go back now, but I'm so angry, I can't go back. And so it was really to put a frame around what it was that you lost. And so the lost love object came to be that universal term that I use throughout the book.
It's so inclusive. I think it's great. And, the other loss is the opportunity, because you're reaching back for Jell-O, is the opportunity to see what things could be available to you if you begin to orient forward. Yes. And if you begin to orient in your present moment, looking ahead. And, I think from our conversations, that's also like the gift of the Zola Experience is the opening up of things that can come to you when you're facing forward to receive them.
Absolutely. And there's a piece in there we talk about your legacy. And the legacy can be anything. The legacy can be, like I had a person that was, the legacy is going to be, I got fired from my job. So my legacy for that period of my life, every year, the day that I got fired, I'm celebrating me. I'm going to spend a day at my favorite spa. That sounds like a great one. And then we have somebody that lost a parent um, that was really into fitness. And so they decided that they were going to do a scholarship 5K run every year. And so it can really be whatever it is, whatever the legacy that you would like to highlight, that's what it's going to be. And when you're in a group setting, it gets a lot of group support, and they say, okay, I'll support your idea, you support mine, I'll come help weed your garden or whatever it is that you're doing. And in the individual, as a therapist, it's like, yes, you can. Let's, do it. Take pictures, bring them in, let me see.
So. Yeah, that's great. And that is something that you get from the group. You get the energy, right? The energy boost from others.
The group is it is rich in the sense that people bring to the group survivorship, thriving, how they have been thriving in their life in the past. And sometimes we lose sight of that. Some of the exercises that we do in the process is like, as a group, each of you comes with some knowledge on how to thrive past the loss. Even though you may be grieving right now, but if you think about it, you've been here before. You know what to do. We're just going to support you to do it. And then, the person that has lost somebody last year versus the person that lost somebody 2 weeks ago. And they will say, well, this is what has helped me get from this point to this point. And the person looking back can say, okay, I can relate to whatever it is that you're talking about.
Almost everybody's lost something or someone in their life. And then you put that around a group and you've got so much experience to pull from, but not just experience of loss, experience from having lost and recovering from it.
Absolutely. Of thriving.
Yeah. Yes, of thriving. Explain how you designed the cover, how you came to the cover art. It's really a beautiful cover to the Zola Experience.
This is my cover art, my logo. And if you look at it, it is a hand that the butterfly has lighted upon. And so, I love butterflies. And so in thinking of the lifespan of a butterfly, all that the butterfly goes through in order to get here. And though each step is equally as important as the next, and you can't rush the stages it has to go, particularly at the end when it's coming out of that chrysalis and it's trying to worm its way out. If you open it up for it, the butterfly will die. You cannot do it for it. Recovery is something you have to do yourself. They say in the rooms all the time, recovery is an inside job. It has to start here. It has to start here. And then when I thought about the hands that the butterfly had lighted upon, when we think about recovery, we know that people have to have tools for recovery. And so each of the fingers is a tool, is part of their recovery toolbox. And so the hands are those things like your clinician, your exercise, your eating plan, your 12-step meetings, your church, your this, your that. And that's what holds you up. And it's always should be there in case you want to come back and rest. So the butterfly flits on and off, but it comes and it sits there to rest just for a minute, knowing in great comfort that it has all of those things that is going to support it and help it to get to the next flower or to the next stage in life. So that's what struck me when I saw that. I said, that's my logo. And I had prayed on it. It was so crazy because, it's like, I think it should be this. I think it should be that. And I was like, ooh, it's not an I thing. It's like, what, let me receive it. What is it that I am? What is it that should it be? And then there it is. I lighted upon it. And there it is.
It's beautiful. Well, it's beautiful. And I'm so glad, because it is a beautiful cover to a beautiful journey that you help survivors through. Through such an important transition and transitions in their life. And thank you so much for joining me and joining us and sharing your creation.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, I love you very much. And thank you so much
I
for
love you too.
allowing me to be in your space.
How can people learn more about the Zola Experience and reach out to you if they're interested in becoming a Zola Experience facilitator?
If you're interested in becoming a Zola Experience facilitator, please contact me via email at thezolaexperience@gmail.com. The book is available on Amazon, so please get the book. The goal is that we'll have our open class in December. So please start to contact me because I'm starting to fill things up. Once you contact me, then we'll send you further information.
And that'll be December 2020. And we will have, as soon as this posts for a little bit, we'll have the link to the Zola Experience in the at Dr. Norcott bio. Thank you again for joining us. And thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope this has been helpful. And I hope that you take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Bye.
Thank you so much.